Chemical and physical properties are really important to understand because once you do understand them, you can actually use them to start to separate mixtures of materials. The first thing that we're going to talk about in this chapter, as far as these physical and chemical properties are concerned, is really using the differences in physical properties to physically separate materials. There are several different separation techniques that we can use to accomplish this task. And again, I want to reiterate, it's the difference in the physical properties that you can use to actually physically separate materials. Some of these will probably seem pretty familiar to you. And of course, we'll review more of these as we proceed into the lab. First of all, there's filtration, and that's going to use the difference in particle sizes to physically separate materials. Particles that are too large to fit through the filter paper will remain in the top of the filter paper, whereas particles that are nice and small, like water and other dissolved substances, will actually filter through the filter paper and down into the beaker below. Again, we'll talk about the perfect technique for filtering as we proceed into the lab. Another technique that you can use is called distillation. Now, this actually uses the difference in boiling points to physically separate materials. It's really good for separating the liquid that would have dissolved a solid on the inside. The solid would have a very high boiling point and wouldn't want to necessarily go into the vapor phase, whereas the liquid will have a lower boiling point and will want to go in the vapor phase. Distillation is specifically the technique that will remove the liquid and then recapture it. So this is really what you want to use to recapture the liquid. We use this technique in the lab to generate all of our distilled water that we use during the course of lab. The technique that you'll be using more often, however, is called evaporation. Now this too also uses the difference in boiling points to actually separate the materials, but instead this one's more used to collect the solid. The liquid is allowed to go into the gaseous state, and that just goes off and into the atmosphere, whereas the solid remains behind in the evaporating dish, and that's what we'll be collecting.